Destiny 2 is presently one of the most popular games in the world, and it has been for quite a while actually. As a longtime fan of Bungie, part of me is incredibly happy with how much their success means to people. The first Destiny was extremely popular as well, despite having a lot of glaring issues. Destiny 2 is even more well known, especially since its conversion to a free-to-play model in 2019. The thing that I, along with many other people, take an issue with is the aforementioned free-to-play approach that the game has taken. Now, more than ever, Destiny 2 is again in the spotlight. With the release of its most recent DLC titled Lightfall, the team behind it has received more backlash than it ever has seen before, even considering the series' past shortcomings with Beyond Light, Curse of Osiris, and the game's other shockingly bad expansions. Admittedly, this video is a very long time coming. I absolutely despise Destiny's model, and yet for some reason I just keep giving them my money. So today I wanted to discuss with you all why I believe that the Destiny franchise is in both the best and worst spot it's ever been, what is wrong with the game's development model, and the incredibly unfortunate effect it's having on video games as an art form. Let's talk about First, I want to discuss Lightfall, and specifically why I think Lightfall has resulted in Destiny being in both its best and worst spot that it's ever been. Then I'm going to discuss the game's monetization and seasonal model, and lastly, the overall impact it's had on the gaming market. If you want to see any particular section first, I'll have chapters on, but I very much recommend that you watch the whole thing for context. Originally, that's all this video was supposed to be, just about Lightfall, but I've got a bone to pick with this game, so we're going to do that too. Lightfall has been hyped up for a very long time, and I must admit that I actually wasn't planning on buying it until about 2 weeks out from its release. Like I'm sure a lot of other people, I was completely sold on one thing: the grappling hook. I am of the opinion that every game that adds a grappling hook is pretty much immediately improved. And for the most part, this is true. I bet we get Strand here. Since Destiny's release, I think that the most fun aspect of the game has always been playing around with the different subclasses. We started off with Void, Solar, and Arc, and for a long time that's all we had. But within the past 3 years, we've gotten 2 new elements, Ice and Green. The addition of these 2 subclasses has increased the build variation greatly, especially with the revamped older classes. Ignoring the big stuff, Lightfall has introduced a ton of quality of life changes. With an overhauled mod system, it is now much easier to apply mods to gear, and modding is now much more varied. On top of this, seasonal mods no longer need to take up armor slots, which might actually be one of the best changes Bungie's ever made. Players now have the ability to create and save loadouts for their Guardians to swap between different builds at ease. Unfortunately, you can't really have a great Destiny update with some of the worst content you've ever seen. In the campaign, Emperor Callus is back, and he's pissed, apparently. Remember him? Now, right off the bat, this is weird, considering Callus used to write actual fanfiction about us, so immediately the story is not making a lot of sense. I think it's important to note that I've never been much of a fan of Destiny storytelling. Asking that your players read actual books if they want to understand what's going on is actually just a bad idea. Why spend, here, let's see, $500 million fucking dollars on a video game if you could just be writing books for $0 and tell the same, if not a better story? The problem is that the game introduces characters and concepts that it expects us to be familiar with, but I'm not going to read a book to understand who these people are. The only reason I know anything is because one of my best friends does read all the books. Now, according to said friend, every one of these scary triangles has a disciple, which are just the fancy word for the leaders of the ship, right? We fought one in a past raid, which was great. Callus, another past enemy, is a disciple now, and the final boss in Lightfall's raid was once a disciple. This is cool and all, because we're meant to feel like we're making progress against the darkness in this huge intergalactic war, but that doesn't really work, because there's thousands of ships, meaning there's thousands of disciples too. So in reality, we're actually making very, very little progress against the darkness, and so what the game is telling us is just not reality. To start off the campaign, we're instructed to find something before the darkness does, and they throw around some words like radial mass and the veil, but none of it really means anything to us, yet. And with that, you probably thought that it may mean something to us eventually, right? But it doesn't. It never means anything to us. It's never explained, it's never elaborated upon. At many times in the story, some things as simple yet important as the campaign's conclusion, it becomes abundantly clear to us that all of this was pretty much just filler, and that this and the final DLC were actually supposed to be one big package. Of course, there's no problem with that, but only if this was a complete package. The harsh reality of the situation is that it's not a complete package. The campaign is a good length, and the missions are some of the best that Bungie's ever put together, but the problem isn't with the missions, it's with the ending. The ending of the campaign is abrupt. Similar to the way Beyond Light ended, the campaign is just over, like that. It almost feels like it ended by accident. Even for someone who doesn't necessarily play these expansions for the story, I was still following, but it just felt wrong. You beat Callus, and you're shown a cutscene where the darkness takes over the Traveler. That's cool and all, that's great, but the problem is, these are the same cutscenes. The cutscene at the beginning of the DLC is so clearly the same exact cutscene, same positions of characters, same scenario, same timeline as the cutscene we're shown at the end, that it's almost insulting to the player's intelligence. We just paid $50 so that we could see the end of the cutscene we got as a trailer. Whose fucking idea was that? But Jesus Christ. Anyways, the story's incomplete. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And so we have to wait a year and pay $50 more for that DLC down the road. But Lightfall is not all bad. There is still a lot here for people to enjoy. The gameplay has never been so fluid, not even just because of Strand. Due to the game's increase in difficulty, the game is back to being somewhat of a challenge. Between pre-Lightfall and now, you're dying more, you're shooting more, and combat encounters are now longer and more challenging, even for Destiny veterans. The new city, Neomuna, always has something going on, and it feels much fuller than just about every location we've gotten from Bungie lately. PvE is better than ever, but unfortunately Crucible has received almost no love. In addition to this, Gambit is more of a dead game mode than any activity we've ever had in the game. But these are all things that have barely been touched for quite a while, so what were we expecting? Obviously, these game modes were not the focus of Lightfall, so while disappointing, I don't really care anyway, but of course that's more of a personal thing. The problem is more about Bungie ignoring entire sections of their community. I cannot imagine how the PvP, or God, even the Gambit community are feeling. As someone who was once part of the quote-unquote Gambit community, it really is disappointing to see such an inventive game mode completely shunned. But of course that makes for a perfect point to transition into what I really wanted to talk about, which is Bungie's really strange and just greedy development cycle. For those who play Destiny, I'm sure you're already aware of this, but for the people who don't, Destiny, just like every other game made in the past 5 years, runs on a seasonal model. Each season typically runs for around 3 months, as seasons do, but sometimes Bungie isn't creative enough, so they extend it for an extra 2 months so they can figure out what's next. Boiled down to its absolute basics, I don't have an issue with a seasonal-based systems. Most of the games I play are on a seasonal-based system, but the problem with specifically Destiny's is that every single time they're asking you for money. If you don't pay them for the seasons, you can't take part in some activities, it's impossible to get some weapons, armor, things like that, and this is for around $10 to $15 every single time, I believe. Where it starts to get really silly is when you throw the expansions into the mix. Each expansion is meant to last around a year, give or take, of content in conjunction with the seasons. But the problem with this idea is that many players drop off after the first few weeks, basically just a little bit after the raid comes out. There's nothing particularly wrong with this either, unless you consider just how much money Bungie is actually asking us for these expansions. You have the option between the expansion or the expansion and the annual pass. More or less, this team is asking you for $50, nearly the price of an entire AAA game, every single year for a DLC that might net you 2 weeks of fun. Alternatively, you could shell out $100 every year for the aforementioned DLC, as well as the several seasons that year and dungeons that will come out eventually. You don't know yet, and they won't tell you because they don't know yet, but they still want an extra $50 for it. Of course you can buy these passes and keys down the road, but they incentivize buying these extra $100 versions for exclusive pieces of armor or weapons or activities or whatever it may be. Not only is all this content gated from people who don't have an extra $50 to spend at the time, but every expansion there are several other items that are included, but only if you buy that $100 version. I also think it's incredibly important to mention here that this model is absolutely fucking evil for new players. People who have heard the buzz and are looking to jump into Destiny now have to play catch up. So unless said new players are looking to only play the least fun and least up-to-date aspects of the game, then they have to buy all of these things all at once. There's no way to grind or naturally build up to these things, or activities or expansions. They have to spend like $300 to get all the DLC so that they can actually enjoy the best and most refined parts of the game. I've sunk a lot of money into the Destiny franchise, and I've sunk even more time into it. With that being said, one may argue that this video is coming from a place of love, a place deep within me that hopes Bungie could someday treat Destiny more as a game than a business, but that's just not true. This video is coming from probably my darkest, most hateful opinion of all time. I love Destiny. I love the gameplay, I love the raids, I love the activities, sometimes, but I think I hate Bungie. They've made some of the most incredible games of all time, but I truly believe that Destiny is actively ruining gaming culture. As one of the first big, quote, live service games, a title that's genuinely nauseating nowadays, we're starting to see the largest effects of its success. Bungie has proven time and time again that Destiny is truly an unkillable bastion through its flourishing success directly after some of its worst periods. Many studios have taken this as an invitation directly into the live service market, and many have failed. Even Rocksteady, creators of the Arkham series, one of the most influential developers maybe ever, have announced that their upcoming single-player open-world story game will be a live service title. How that is even conceivable is just beyond me, but that's not really my problem, it's theirs, so good luck to them, I guess. And while there are a lot of other live service titles that are surviving, Destiny is without a doubt one of the biggest names, but also the one that's asking the most of its player base. Because they're doing it, everyone thinks they can do it. Even recently, so many live service titles have failed. Games like Rumbleverse, Apex Legends Mobile, Crossfire X, and so many more are shutting down servers because people just don't want to play live service games anymore. It was fun for a while, but now people want to go back to paying for a game and playing it until they don't want to play it anymore. Paying $200 a month for battle passes across 10 different games just isn't attractive as a player anymore, and it's not sustainable for a lot of gamers either. Looking at the future of these types of games, and just games in general, it's not promising. I hope that the failure of so many eager titles with the slapped-on live service tag will soon click something for these companies. I hope that one of these days we can give this up and go back to our one-time purchase full packages. Please? But that is all I have to say, I guess. Thanks for listening to me rant. It's just incredibly frustrating as a consumer and also a gamer to see so many interesting ideas fall flat because of one simple business idea. And I think that Bungie is very much to blame for a lot of that slack. But with all that being said, thank you everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Just go, just go, just go, just go.
Oh my fucking god.
Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Finally. Holy shit. Oh, I might cry. I might cry in tears of joy.
I think I just pissed my pants.